Welcome, everyone. My name is Peter Handler, Director of Product Management, and we're here to talk about a new Panzura product called Panzura Symphony. I'd like to introduce Mike Harvey, who is the architect and founder of Symphony as a product, and he is going to lead us off and discuss, and we're going to talk about Symphony.
Thanks, Peter. Hi, folks. We appreciate your time today. We're going to have a good conversation about this new data services platform that Panzura is bringing to market, and I'm sure you're going to find it informative.
So, Mike, one of the challenges that we aim to solve with Symphony is managing data sprawl. And one of our top concerns from customers is that the volume of data that is being generated is simply out of control, and they have no idea how to find it, much less manage it. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so I think everyone on this call, whether you're a data steward, a CTO, a CIO, if you work in ops, if you work in compliance, everyone knows that unstructured data is bloating. There's a tsunami of files and objects being driven by end user applications, sensors, machines, AI, you name it. And regulatory burden means that most enterprises have to keep that data for a long time. I mean, sometimes forever in practical terms. And so what it means is that organizations have to do more. They have to store more. They have to protect more. They have to make more data resilient. They have to make more data safe from ransomware or loss. But IT budgets are flat or declining. So it's a real challenge in the industry today. Doesn't matter what vertical you find yourself. Doesn't matter if it's healthcare or life sciences or financial services or manufacturing or public sector. Enterprises have the same problem. And we like to say that it doesn't need to be that hard. What this platform gives customers is the ability to gain the insights that they need, and also to drive the mobility to find the most appropriate solution for a particular data set.
So, Mike, in summary, you'd say it allows them to get data intelligence and take actions in one application.
Yeah, exactly. So we like to talk about the data sphere, which is your storage portfolio. It's the data sets that you have. It's the metadata that gives you context about the unstructured data that drives your business. So Symphony can be thought of not as a point solution or a simple data mover or a simple application, but it connects into your storage estate. It provides the insights to the metadata that you have, expressing the context of the content that you have. And of course, our integration with major platforms, protocols, and cloud endpoints means that whether you're an all on-prem enterprise, whether you're all cloud, or whether you're most likely hybrid, this data services platform has the support and the capabilities that you need, no matter what your use case happens to be.
Great. So when we talk about Symphony, we talk about the ability to perform all these actions in one platform, whether it's data insights or data movement.
Yeah, so what we've done with Symphony is that we have, after 2 decades of interaction with customers from a wide variety of industries, we've aggregated most of the use cases into 3 subject areas: data discovery and assessment, risk and compliance, and data movement and orchestration. So if you think about it, we all know that we want to do things with data, all sorts of different things. But before we can determine what to act on, we need to know what it is we have. Discovery and assessment is the first step. That really drives the decision support and puts facts in the hands of data stewards and operations managers so that we can know as a fact what it is we're working with, so then we can decide what it is that we want to do. Now, you could argue that risk and compliance is part of the first step, discovery and assessment, but it adds some complexity. Risk and compliance use cases usually require deeper insights, content analysis, full data type specific metadata awareness, and even sometimes attribute scanning and key identification within the content of unstructured data itself. So for that reason, we split risk and compliance out as its standalone use case. And then finally, this is where the rubber hits the road. This is the action that we want to take, movement and orchestration. Whether we're seeking out files that match certain criteria because we wish to send them to a redaction application, whether we want to identify inactive data or cool data so that we can store that on something much, much, much less expensive than our on-prem expensive primary storage, or perhaps we want to dynamically create a workflow and a pipeline for AI. The Symphony data services platform can do all of these things, and we believe that enterprise customers today need capabilities that span all of these primary use cases. Otherwise, they're always going to have something missing, right? There's going to be a gap. They may have the visibility, but they can't take the action. They may have the action, but they don't have the visibility. And then when we talk about the much more complicated use cases of risk and compliance, they could be completely blind to what risks may hide inside the data that's just sprawled across their environment.
Absolutely. Now, one of the interesting points here is that in addition to the data assessment, we have all the tools to take action on those. But let's dive into the data assessment deeper before we get there.
Yeah, absolutely. So as a first step, and it makes a lot of sense, right? Before you can act, you really need to know. And Symphony has full metadata awareness, both of file systems, object stores, and cloud endpoints. And we can identify all of the typical items that would support most of the decisions that operations folks and compliance folks need to make. And that can be everything from file ownership, group membership, date for creation, modification, temperature, file type, metadata tags, you name it. All of the file system, object store, and cloud metadata is available within a Symphony assessment report. This drives the ability for policy creation, which is what we're going to talk about next, and that's where the end user or the data steward, the CTO, the CIO, whomever, can make decisions about the action to take with full awareness. And so I think you can see on the screen here just a few examples of the kinds of insights that you can gain with the Symphony data services platform. And this is just a sample, of course. All of the ACL information for files is also available. As I mentioned, the group membership, storage consumption by users, storage consumption by groups for chargeback reporting, the data types that are detected across the unstructured landscape, which is very useful for customers to determine the extent to which their storage may be consumed by illegal file types, let's say, or file types that are outside the scope of policy, but indeed very useful for identification of garbage data, EXEs, ISOs, MSIs, these kinds of completely immutable data types for which their existence on expensive primary storage for most use cases is probably invalid. Of course, Symphony provides a full REST API and fully supports webhooks. So the assessment and discovery step within the Symphony framework can be triggered from external orchestration systems like Control-M, Jenkins, Ansible, Puppet, Airflow, you name it, or could even be triggered by direct API call for those customers with a mature DevOps environment.
So Mike, what you're saying is that everything within Symphony can be driven by API from external calls to integrate
Yeah,
into a customer's environment.
yeah, absolutely. So for those customers with a mature DevOps team, Symphony has a full REST API. Um, Anything that you can achieve in the Symphony single pane of glass, you can achieve programmatically. But we also have a webhook capability because some customers, they don't really want to invest the time with the software integration for a full API. So tasks that are created in Symphony can be remotely triggered very easily from those orchestration systems that I mentioned. So Symphony is powerful in that you can use Symphony as the orchestration platform, but say a large organization, maybe a financial services organization or a telco, they're probably already going to have something like Control-M, let's say. The good news for those customers is the workflow that's triggered in Control-M for all of the other applications that they have can also be triggered for the tasks that they wish Symphony to achieve. So we can integrate with existing workflow automation, or we can take on the role of the workflow automation ourselves.
Excellent.
We've spoken a little bit about data discovery to drive insights. And I mentioned there was a little overlap with risk and compliance. What I'd like to do is drill down a little more into the details. What we find enterprise customers need in addition to metadata awareness. And when we talk about metadata, we're talking about things like owner information, file type, creation date, etc., security strings, ACLs, permissions, this nature. But often, to support risk and compliance use cases, that system metadata is insufficient. It often contains, or nearly always does not contain, business context. So we've partnered with vendors like Grau and IBM so that we can provide a full content inspection and full metadata awareness capability. So where there is actionable intelligence inside file content or object content, for example, social security numbers, national insurance numbers, credit card numbers, things like this, where full content inspection and string awareness is required, the Symphony Data Services platform natively integrates with the leading vendors in that sphere, IBM certainly being one of them. In the metadata specific use cases, our integration with Metadata Hub from Grau gives us the ability to provide customers with selectivity based on the custom metadata of certain application types. So you find this in, let's say, life sciences. So some data types in life sciences can have up to 500,000 metadata fields in their artifacts, which is, it's a mind-blowing number. And so in many cases for those workflows, those data scientists, those subject matter experts don't necessarily need to reacquire the artifact, which would be the file or object. They need to understand the metadata, which gives them the intelligence that drives decisions based on context of that artifact. So they're able to do a great deal of analysis with the metadata only, and only reacquire the artifacts that match exact conditions, because these artifacts or these files or objects, they tend to be very, very large. So for customers that have these complex risk and compliance requirements, those burdens, it's important to know that the Symphony Data Services platform has that in mind and has the partnerships and the technical implementations with the expert systems that drive that value.
That's great. So where Symphony gets really interesting to me, because there are a number of products out there that can drive insights and can tell you
Mhm,
what data is in your estate and what's available. Where Symphony really changes the game is it allows you in a single pane of glass to take action,
mhm.
to perform action. I mean, it's wonderful to tell somebody that they have, hundreds of terabytes or petabytes of cold data that could be archived, but that doesn't actually save you any money. What saves you money is actually archiving it, which is
Mhm.
exactly what you can do directly from Symphony.
That's the point of Symphony, right? There are plenty of reporting products on the market, and that's great. But having insight without action, it's meaningless. I think it was Aristotle who said that the purpose of knowledge is not knowledge, but action. And when we talk about the dynamic data movement and orchestration of this data services platform, we're talking about action. Discovery and assessment tells us what we have, and then it's the action step that achieves our objectives. Now, a very popular use case for Symphony customers is storage optimization. The economic climate right now, a lot of customers are looking to save as much as they possibly can, while retaining the service level agreements that they have or that their users demand. So how do we do this? Well, Symphony can identify inactive data. Symphony can identify rot data, or what we call redundant, obsolete, or trivial data, and can deal with those data sets in an appropriate manner that is decided by the data stewards or policy writers of the customer. So, for example, inactive data, something that's very cold. Let's say files or objects that no one has accessed in 5 years or more. Why should I be storing that on my expensive storage? Why should I be backing that up or snapshotting that every day? Let's say that, and I would say that typically in an enterprise, up to 70%, maybe more, of the data set hasn't been used by anybody uh, in 2 years or more. And so what that means is that the storage infrastructure that I have is over provisioned by many times. Okay, so that means I'm spending money I don't need to spend, but the story is it's bigger than that. It means I'm backing up more than I need to back up. It also means if I have a disaster, I could be spending 300 to 400 times longer recovering my data set, only to put myself in a position where most of the data is not even going to be accessed. So I'm affecting my RPO and RTO objectives with data I know that no one cares about. Now, the value of this data isn't zero, so that's not necessarily true, but if we were to give it a value number, it's a number approaching zero. What Symphony does for that use case and the value it provides for those customers is that we can strip the content of that data set, place the content somewhere much, much less expensive. Let's say an infrequent access storage class on a major cloud vendor, or even tape, if that's appropriate, but retain the original representation of that data such that users and applications can reacquire simply by going to the same place. We also inherit the security of the original namespace, so we're not breaking any security or introducing any complexity in that respect. So that's a primary use case. But with the emergence of AI workflows, what customers are finding, especially in the enterprise, that they've made investments with the right modeling environments, and they've hired the teams to build and train models. But when it comes time to do the training, how do they get high quality data? If my enterprise has data siloed, then I'm missing the first step before I can have AI. I don't have a pipeline. What Symphony allows these customers to do is to dynamically create pipelines and route data sets to the appropriate locations for the use by models, and then to take the result sets and relocate those result sets to where they need to be. We really see Symphony Data Services platform not just as a software application, but as an expert system that really needs to be a part of an enterprise customer's infrastructure, being able to create business as usual policies with data action to guarantee that the right data is in the right location for the right reason, whether it's cost containment, application workflow, whether it's governance, whether it's security, or whether it's to support a vast range of enterprise workflows that may span on-prem legacy systems and new systems that are cloud-born. Symphony is one platform that supports all of those insight steps, risk and compliance, and of course the data action, the movement, the orchestration, and the dynamic data placement to drive whatever business outcomes are important to the enterprise.
Mike, before we move on, I want to highlight one other use case. So you talked about risk and compliance, and you talked about data movement, and we've talked about how customers can save tremendous amounts of money by archiving data that is older than 2 years, which hasn't been touched. Now, there's one other thing that's becoming an increasing risk in the enterprise, which is legal risk. So by understanding the content of your data, by understanding how long it's been sitting out there, you can create policies that will allow you to push data that is going to cause you legal risk, data that would have to go through discovery should your enterprise get sued, either to inexpensive storage, or by policy simply remove it from your data estate. That's all about reducing the liability and cost of responding to lawsuits. That's another use case for Symphony.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we talk about let's talk about retention policies. There's two sides to that. There's retaining the data that matches those conditions for as long as it is required, but not a moment longer. And so Symphony policies can be configured to retain the data sets that must be retained, but also to purge data sets once they have expired from a regulatory burden perspective. And that's a good point that you raise, because the delete function within this services platform does exactly that. And whether the confidence level required for data deletion is obviously very high, and if that actionable intelligence can be served by metadata, then that's great. If deeper content inspection is required before that decision can be made, then that is also supported with the integrations we have with those knowledge platforms that I mentioned. That's a very good point. I think some of the takeaways here is that we've covered the insights and the discovery, the assessment capabilities that this platform provides. And we've looked at governance and compliance and risk use cases, and we've spoken about data orchestration or dynamic workload placement, moving data around depending on what the use case requires. But if we step back a little bit, what we have with this platform is a means for an enterprise under one pane of glass, under one technology umbrella, that will integrate with the storage and the applications that they have, will integrate with the orchestration engines that they've got, will provide all of the surface area of deeper integration via APIs to their DevOps teams if required. So if we step back, this is not an application, it's a platform. And a great deal of thought has gone into the design of this technology. Its architecture is patented. Its disintermediated architecture is unique in the market. And so it doesn't really matter so much about the industry the customer operates in. the vertical. If you have unstructured data and you have a lot of it, and you'd like to get insights, and you'd like to optimize your workflows and your costs, if you would like to have a much better understanding of your risk profile, then Symphony is a data services platform that can achieve all of those things with one system. Whether the deployment that you find in your organization is more on-prem, if it's more classic, whether you're 100% cloud-born or whether you're hybrid, as most enterprises are today, this technology will be able to work with you and the existing products that you have to drive those business outcomes. We talk about data excellence at exabyte scale. As I mentioned before, a lot of work has gone into building the native support and the protocol support for all of the major platforms in the market, all of the major object stores that you would typically run on-prem, and of course, all of the major cloud providers, because we are aware that every enterprise is different and the mix of technologies is going to be different from one customer to the next. We've done a lot of work to make sure that we can handle the data motion because we have the native protocol and object support for all of the endpoints that customers are more likely to be using. As I mentioned, because of the way that this technology is built, because of its flexibility, anyone with data, a lot of data to manage, can make use of this tech, regardless of the vertical that you might find yourself in. This technology is used by a range of large customers who you would know, and some of them who you may not be aware of. But the importance of this statement is that whether you're in energy, financial services, education, public sector, life sciences, manufacturing, construction, healthcare, education, media, Symphony is a platform that can add value and can definitely solve the challenges that you're facing today.
Thank you, Mike. It's been tremendously exciting hearing about a platform that not only integrates with your existing environment, but allows you to take advantage of all of the data that you've accumulated. So what are our next steps?
So look, next steps, get in touch with your Panzura rep, have a demo of the platform, and if you like what you see, talk to us about getting a data assessment so you can see how Symphony can get you the insights against your structures, your data sets, your objects, and give us the chance to prove the value.
Excellent. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Peter.
And thank you all for attending.